So I was going to play Janet Jackson's Control, but I couldn't stop laughing long enough. But this is the second part of fiscal federalism. And remember, fiscal federalism is a way that the federal government can control states' actions by giving them money. So grants and politics. Actually, the process of the federal government giving states money is a very political thing. You have two different political parties with two completely different views of federal spending and federal control over the states. So Democrats, which level of government should have more power? Right, the national government. Democrats would point to moments in history where state governments haven't done what they were supposed to do and haven't protected the people's rights, so the national government should provide for the people. They would look at parts of history that said that the national government was the only entity that could provide for states and people that were struggling, like during the Great Depression. Okay. Now, if the national government were to have more power over the states, which kind of grant allows for the national government to have more power over the states, and which kind of grant would the Democrats like then? All right, categorical grants, because categorical grants can have a carrot-stick aspect. In order to get the money, you have to do what the federal government says. So in order to get money for education, you have to integrate your schools. Which type of federalism would Democrats like? Dual or cooperative? Like cooperative. They would like cooperative because the national government and the state's government would be working together. Again, the whole argument behind that is the best way to protect the people, and according to Democrat or a liberal, is to control state spending. Okay. Republicans, completely opposite. So which level of government should have more power? Right, state. Republicans are states' writers for the most part. Which kind of grant would they like? If they like the states to have more discretion. Right, block. Which type of federalism would they like? They would like a situation of devolution, revolution, dual federalism, or even better, going back to our federalism, which is devolution, revolution. Remember, they prefer a smaller national government and less government intervention in states' rights and state spending, for the most part. Okay, federal mandates, as opposed to a woman date. Okay, I'm sure that went over well. Federal mandates require the federal government to it's a federal government requirement imposed on the states. It's basically the federal government directing or ordering the state to do something. This is an example of a federal mandate that affects you. In 1984, the federal government ordered the states to raise their drinking age to 21. Now, before that, each state had their own policies regarding drinking age, and you can see the varieties up there. In the peachish states, you could drink if you were 18. In the yellowish states, it was 19. In these states right here in the Northeast, it was 20. Okay, but the federal government said that all states had to raise drinking age to 21, that there was going to be a national drinking age. Okay, again, mandates by definition is a requirement imposed on the states. Now, the worst kind of dates or mandates are the ones where your man doesn't pay. Okay. Or unfunded mandates. Yay. Really bad at the jokes. Okay. And unfunded mandates are imposing a mandate or an order on the states, but you're not going to give the states any federal funding. So you're telling the states that they have to do something, but then you're not going to give them any money to do it. It's like your parents telling you to go to the grocery store. Okay. If you want to eat, you'll go to the grocery store. Alright. An unfunded mandate would be like your parents sending you to the grocery store, telling you to get things for dinner, but not giving you any money to buy the things for dinner, and you have to buy them out of your pocket. And sometimes you don't have the money because you don't make as much money as your parents in a lot of cases. And that's the same for the states. The states might not have the money to enforce a mandate, and the states don't have as much revenue as the federal government does. So states tend to argue against unfunded mandates, and rightfully so. In 1995, the federal government tried to reform unfunded mandates, led by this guy, part of Newt Gingrich's Contract with America. Okay, the contract with America is that we were going to give the states back more power, we were going to have more morality and traditional family values and whatnot. But an important part is the Contract for America, the unfunded mandate reform. And it was a response to states' complaints. They were like, the federal government is imposing these mandates on us, they're not giving us any money, and we can't pay for it out of our budget. So the unfunded mandate reform requires the CBO, which is the Congressional Budget Office. The Congressional Budget Office actually compiles a lot of the charts that we look at in class because they deal with the national government economy. So the CBO has to be honest with the states. The CBO has to tell the states before they implement. It requires them to estimate the cost of implementing these mandates. And it also will give the states a little bit of time to incorporate a mandate into their budget. So let's say once you graduate, you're still living with your parents. You're still eating with your parents. Okay? You're not making as much money as your parents, but your mom tells you to go to the grocery store, and she doesn't give you any money. You say to your mom, I can't afford it. You know, if you tell me ahead of time that I need X amount of dollars every week to go to the grocery store for us, I don't mind, but you gotta give me a heads up so I could set that money aside. So she tells you, set $20 aside for every 2 weeks, and once a week I'm gonna tell you to go to the grocery store to pick up something for dinner. And you're like, okay, now give me some time and I can do this. And you ask her, can I have till my next paycheck? And she says yes. Right? The same thing. That's what the Unfunded Mandate Reform Act asked. That the states asked the national government to do that for them. And for the most part, it's ineffectual. I mean, the national government imposes all sorts of unfunded mandates on the states, doesn't give them amount of time, doesn't give them enough time to put it in their budget, and doesn't grant them enough money to cover it. So, Unfunded Mandates Reform Act pretty much did nothing. Yay! We'll go over these charts in class. Make sure, when you're looking at a chart, make sure you read both sides, all the sides, understand that the numbers are in millions or billions, check out the dates, make sure you look at the key, and you understand the trends. In this particular graph, what you're seeing is that the total amount of money that is granted to the states increases, as well as the total amount of money or percentage of grants to states that's coming from the federal budget. So it is a symmetrical relationship. Okay, mandates and state budgets. This will show you that some mandates take a larger percentage out of the state's budget. So it's really hard for poor states, okay, Mississippi, South Carolina, alright, it's really hard for poor states to cover all of the mandates, and it takes a large chunk out of the state's budget in those orange states to cover federal mandates. Okay, last but not least, control tactics. Other ways the federal government controls the states. It's a direct order, similar to a mandate, but you do it or you get fined or sued. Pretty intense. Okay, so you do it or we're going to take you to court. Cross-cutting sanctions. The states have to carry out this one program, or they're going to lose funding for all federal government, all federal government grants. So you integrate your schools, or you lose all federal money. Not just for education, but for everything. Transportation, healthcare, everything. Enforce the Civil Rights Act of 1965, or lose federal money for everything. Okay, those are two real examples of cross-cutting sanctions. Alright, crossover sanctions. States have to do this one program or implement this one program, or they're going to lose funding for another program. So going back to the mandated increase in drinking age, that was a crossover sanction. States either increase their drinking age to 21, or they lose money for highway transportation. So do it, or you lose funding for a related activity. Total preemption. Federal government evokes complete supremacy. Basically, the federal government is telling you that they're going to go in and they're going to run a program in your state. So an example of that could be an aspect of the Affordable Health Care Act, or Obamacare. If states choose not to run an insurance exchange program for people to buy insurance and let it be state run, the federal government's going to go in and do that insurance exchange program for them. Partial preemption. Partial preemption is kind of the same thing. It's where the federal government tells you that you're going to do something, that you're going to need to implement a program, but they give you time to figure out how your state would best run it. So if the Clean Air Act is an example of this. The federal government told states that they had to have certain pollution controls, and they had to have a certain level of clean air by a certain time, but the federal government gave them time to figure out how to best implement it in their state. And then if the state couldn't figure it out, then the federal government would come in and do it for them. So I like to equate it to, your mom says clean your room, and if you can't clean your room up to my specifications, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do it for you. Now, that is the idea of intergovernmentalism, where inter means between, and governmentalism means between levels of government. So they're kind of working together to solve a problem. Give the states a chance to do what's best for their people, but if they fail, then the federal government will come in and take care of it for them. Mandatory partial preemptions, kind of the same thing. I've never seen that come up in an AP exam, but never say never. It's where the federal government tells the state to figure it out on your own, gives them a timetable, and then also tells them to pay for it themselves. So out of all of these, partial preemption is the best for states. Total preemption, the federal government's totally coming in and telling you how to do it. Mandatory partial preemption, you have to get it done, you have to pay for it, but you still have an opportunity sometime to figure out how to do it yourself. Alright, that is all for federalism.